think I turned it backwards. I turned it off and then on. Anyway, so we have to learn to endure the things we have. So let's start with the reading, and then we will move on from there.
The reading today is Ecclesiastes 1 through 17.
Nope.
Okay, that's what I got. But what did you want me to read? 1 till?
Read whatever shows up.
1 through 9. Thank you. Ecclesiastes 1 through 9. Who is like the wise man? Who knows the explanation of things? Wisdom brightens a man's face and changes its hard appearance. Obey the king's command, I say, because you took an oath before God. Do not be in a hurry to leave the king's presence. Do not stand up for a bad cause, for he will do whatever he pleases. Since a king's word is supreme, who can say to him, "What are you doing?" Whoever obeys his command will come to no harm, and the wise heart will know the proper time and procedure. For there is a proper time and a proper procedure for every matter, though a man's misery weighs heavily upon him. Since no man knows the future, who can tell him what is to come? No man has the power over the wind to contain it, so no one has power over the days of his death. And no one is discharged in time of war, so wickedness will not release those who practice it. All this I saw as I applied my mind to everything done under the sun. There is a time when a man lords it over others to his own hurt.
I had 17 before, and I decided to cut it short, but since I saw the age of the person reading. But anyway, if Zach had been coming up, he had 30-something verses. But, no. All right, so first off, God tells us to submit to authority. Now, God never intended for Israel to be under a kingship. I can't remember the ocracy for that. He never intended it for his people to be under a democracy, or as we are in America, a republic. He never intended that. God's intention from the very beginning was us to be governed by a theocracy, by God. God's intention from day one is, you will be my people, and I will be enough for you. Boy, wouldn't life be different if God, who knows all things, was the one making the decisions? I mean, when Israel wanted an earthly king to be like everybody else, God said, now think about it. Before you do this, I want you to think about what's... He says, and we'll start in verse 11, he's going to take your sons away from you. And he's going to make an army that is so big, and he will use your sons to do it. By the way, you know, we always have a saying in the military, and we really believe it, is if you want to make sure that we negotiate and have peace, ask soldiers to do it. We hate war. Every soldier hates what war causes. And so, you know, he'll just take your sons and put them into battle. He doesn't care. It's not him. He'll take your daughters for his service. He'll take the very best you grow in your fields, in your vineyards, your olive groves. He's going to take it. He's going to take 1/10 of everything you grow and keep it for himself. He'll take your servants and make them do all the work for him. He'll take 1/10 of your flocks. He'll take, even you will become the king's servant. So beyond this, we see he's right. You know, I love them. They're like, okay, so is that all that there is going to be wrong with this? Yeah, we still want a king. Why would you still want a king? Babylon's got a king. We want a king. Assyria's got, the Philistines have a king. We want a king. Okay, why? Because God knew what he was saying. I mean, if you look around what was happening, idol worship was everywhere. You've got worship of Baal, Asherah, Shemoth, Dagon, Molech. And, you know, you do realize the golden calf didn't go away after they went into the desert. They brought back the golden calf to worship several other times in the history of Israel. I mean, if you just saw okay, so if you know what the story was about that golden calf, you would think you would say, you know what, that's a bad idea. Let's make something else up as our God. But no, they don't. They keep going back to it. We see the persecution of the prophets of God over and over again. You realize Israel even practiced child sacrifice to the god Molech. They killed their own children to worship a false god. Now, we got a lot of problems in this country, but we're not at the place where we're killing children and sacrificing them. Well, I don't think I should have said that. Because we are sacrificing children for our own convenience and not for even a God. And no, that wasn't planned. That just happened right then. And that really bothers me, by the way. That's another day. But they continue to want to follow these other nations because they saw that as better than what they had under God. And so I don't get it. In fact, God's prophecy comes true because out of the 38 kings of Israel, 5 were good. 33 kings were evil. Now, that hasn't changed. God's still right about that. In more modern times, we hear about this in Haiti. When you get off the airplane in Haiti, there's this very sharp hill right across from the airport. And I asked Luke one day because I said, I always see just lines of people going up that mountain and coming back down there. And I said, I see them carrying torches a lot of times. When the dictator Papa Doc Duvalier was there, he killed 60,000 of his own people because he didn't trust them. About 20,000 were killed on that hill in Cap-Haïtien, Haiti. And Luckner says that's their families going up to pray about it. Adolf Hitler, of course, he killed 6 million Jews during his reign of terror. Mobutu Sese Seko, the dictator of Zaire, Republic of Congo, he took $5 billion out of his treasury and out of the people's pockets as they starved to death. The only way people in that country survived was USAID and United Nations bringing them rice because he robbed that country, took everything. He had dozens of planes and cars and wives, and it was ridiculous. So God knows what he's talking about. And he says, so if you're going to live in this world, expect to be troubled by the things going on. He says in verse 14, you know what? Sometimes the righteous suffer and the wicked prosper. Have we seen that? Yeah, of course we have. We see the wicked moving ahead in the world and we say, why not us, Lord? You know, it's our turn. We want to break. But then we start sounding like Elijah we talked about last week, right? Who starts whining because he doesn't get what he thinks he deserves from God. By the way, today, if you get nothing else from that little thought right there, you deserve nothing in comparison to what God has done for you. He has already been so good in that he bought me back from sin. And so God deserves it. So God, I don't really deserve much more. I'm still going to ask, aren't you? But I don't deserve it. So anyway, we can't always understand why things happen as they do. Job, poor Job is sitting there, and one of my favorite long stories in the Bible. And I really got to tell you, I don't preach it hardly at all because even I don't understand that. I've looked at it, but so God calls a meeting one day, and this is part of the answer to what Josh was saying about Saul being tormented. God calls a meeting, and yes, Satan and the demons had to appear before God. That's obvious because it says, and Satan was there. So God had demanded all the spiritual beings show up, apparently. And so he's there, and he says, you know, if you show me one person that trusts you wholly. He said, well, you looked at Job lately? Well, he's all right, but if you weren't giving him everything in the sun, under the sun, and weren't protecting him, he couldn't do anything. He would just curse you. And God says, I tell you what, do anything you want to him, but you can't kill him. And Satan says, All right. And he does a few things to him, and Job still doesn't curse him and die yet. And he says, I'm going to try some more, and God allows it, and he does some more to him. But here's Job's take on it after he's lost his children and his flocks, and he loses everything. Just him and his wife pretty much is all that's left of everything he had before it. And Job is sitting there, and he says, verse 3 of Job chapter 3, he says, may the day on which I was born perish. And the night which said a boy is conceived, may that day turn into darkness. May God not care for that day at all. Don't let the sun even shine that day. May darkness and black gloom claim my birthday. And may a cloud just settle over it. And may the blackness of the day terrify. And then he went on to say in verse 21 of chapter 1, he said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will return. God gives, God takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Job goes through this, and you know, I hope you don't have friends like Job did, because his friends came over and sat with him, and they were, we're going to sit here and cry with you, brother. And they're sitting there quiet. Finally, they said, you could just curse God and die. It'd be all right. But Job doesn't give in to that. And Job's wife says, you want to get this problem over with? Curse God. That's how you do it. Wouldn't do it. Job stayed firm, even in the face of all these struggles. And you know what? There's not a one of us that has lost everything like that. I mean, we've all suffered loss. We've all had people we love die. We've all had sicknesses. We've all had all kinds of issues. Maybe you're broke. Maybe you were wealthy. Whatever. You've had your issues, but nothing like Job went through. So Solomon follows up this thought with saying, so just sit back and enjoy life. In other words, don't worry about who the king or the president or whatever. Don't worry about what your neighbors think about anything. Just live for God and enjoy that life you've got. Just live for over and over again. And he tells you, enjoy the labors of your hands. Now, I don't love yard work. My mom used to love yard work. In fact, I had to apologize to the lady that used to own our house. I was doing a funeral, and she was there, and I said, I am sorry. If you've driven by, the yard does not look like when your husband was living. Because according to all the neighbors, he was out there all day, every day on his knees. And I said, I don't have that kind of time in my life yet. So I don't enjoy doing it. But you know what? When you've done that hard work in the hot and humid sun, and then the flowers start to bloom, and the butterflies come out, and the birds are... There's nothing I love better than sitting on the back porch looking at my birds having my first cup of coffee in the morning. But that takes work to get to there. Enjoy the labor of your hands. So this is true of all of God's work. If you do God's work, you'll be blessed. A garden is for looks. Your job is for money to survive. But God's work, there are lives at stake when we do or don't do God's work. People can die forever when you don't do the work of God. Because death is going to come and happen to everybody, Solomon said. And we know it's true. The righteous die, the wicked die. Now the righteous go to be in God's hands, and that's wonderful. And the sons of men, they're full of evil. They don't get that same privilege. But while we hope, while we live, there's hope. While they live, there is hope. And you can reach them still. Don't give up. I know today there's a lot of us that have children, grandchildren, nephews, whatever, that have turned away from God. And you tried, but don't give up now. You don't know, but what one more word will be the word that brings them back. You don't know. There's a young man that was in my youth group, and he has problems in his life. He's made a lot of mistakes, and he continues to. But you know what? He still calls me every now and then, and I answer the phone. I hate the conversations we have because usually he's not in his right mind when he calls me. But I always think that I may still have one more chance to reach his heart, and I can't give up. As much as I hate that phone call and as much as it turns ugly and nasty sometimes, I still say someday God's going to make that work. So don't give up, because while you live, there's hope for them too. So, I know it was a short lesson today. I've been having a lot of problems with my throat and coughing, but remember, I know Bob's shocked, just like, just remember, life's vanities are going to go away. I told Liam this morning that I had a regret, and that is that when I retired from the Army, I received a medal that can only be given by the President of the United States in Congress. And I had the option to go to D.C. and get that medal at a special ceremony that's held every year when the cherry blossoms bloom. And it was great. I didn't go. A couple reasons, but one, I didn't like the president at the time. I tell Liam, you know what? Presidents come and go. I want to get that chance once in my life. Why did I not go and do that? So don't live with regrets. Don't care who the president is or isn't. Don't care whether Canada becomes a state or not. Just live your life for God and let the rest, yeah, it took you a while, Daryl. Live your life for God and worry about the rest of it later, because all that matters in this world is that I get to heaven and you get to heaven. Nothing else matters. Because once I'm dead, and even if I get the smallest cottage among the mansions in heaven, as I used to hear as a kid, even if I'm on the very back row, I'm still going to sing my head off because I will be in the presence of God. And that's a good thing. Today, if you want to get in the presence of God, if you need some help with that, if you need to confess something, if you need to study, boy, we'd love to study. I mean, and it doesn't have to be anything major. Morgan and I had a great time studying the other night for about 4 hours on a question that we both wanted to talk about and look at in the Bible. If you want to study a little more and to learn more, there's so many people who would love to do that with you, whatever your need. And especially if you're ready to put Jesus on in baptism, to do exactly what he did, to die to your old self, to be buried in the waters of baptism, to rise up from that grave, just like he did, and to live a new life, a life in which, yes, I still make mistakes, but I am not a sinner anymore. Yes, I still make bad choices, but I'm not a bad person anymore, because I am blood-bought, born-again child of God. If you need that, come today while together we stand and while we sing. Which tells me I did have more sermon to go.